Hello again. When it comes to this one, I'm in a pretty good position to critique this one. I think more so than I've been in for a couple of reviews, where I'm always a little bit behind the times on things. I'm a much bigger fan of the reboot Tomb Raider games. That's Tomb Raider and Rise of the Tomb Raider that have come out in the last, couple years, last 5-6 years, than I ever was of the originals, on PlayStation and all that. I never liked the ones on PlayStation. And I feel the stories are much more coherent. I think the motivation is much more coherent, and the gameplay is much more coherent. So it should not come as much of a surprise that if we're just comparing this Tomb Raider, the reboot movie franchise, to the original movie franchise of 2 films starring Angelina Jolie, this one is far and away better. Of course, to be fair, you'd have to go a long way to be worse than those. Those were 2 pretty god-awful movies, even for the 90s. Or early 2000s, I forget exactly when they came out, but they were bad. They were just awful. This one's a lot better, a lot more streamlined, I think. And I think that starts with these games. The ones that this one is based off of are much more, they lend themselves more to movie adaptation than the originals. Laura is now a character instead of a, pardon me, but instead of a masturbation fantasy. Which, if you go back and watch the originals, they're very much playing into that fact. I mean, the films are about, look at how hot Angelina Jolie looks in these shorts and tank top and doing all these moves and things that don't actually help her, achieve her goal. It's just to show off how sexy she is. And this film is not concerned with that. Laura is not a sex pot in this one. She's an attractive young woman, but there's actually a story and a story arc for her, more so than just look how hot she looks in her tank top, So right away we're starting off on much better footing. We're getting to know the character a little bit more. She actually has a story and a story arc, and I will say there are a couple things that disappointed me about this movie. Not for disappointed, but just I think they could have done it better. So I don't know if that's necessarily disappointment. So let's start off by saying, even if you take it away from the video game aspect, even if you take it away from the adaptation aspect, I think it's a good movie. I think it's a fun movie, good action film. I think it's a good first step in what I'm sure Warner Brothers and a lot of other people are hoping will be a new franchise, because of course everything they're trying to think franchise, long-term, numerous sequels, and I think this is a good origin story. I think it introduces us to Laura and reintroduces us to Laura in her new form, and gives us an actor, Alicia, last name is impossible to pronounce, so I'm not even going to try, so I'm just going to call her Alicia, who I think has more acting chops and more of a script to work with than Angelina Jolie ever had. And I think this is kind of like with, I don't want to compare this too much to Power Rangers last year, but I think a lot like Power Rangers, I think this film is an excellent setup. It gets me excited, or at least interested, in what they may do with the franchise and the character going forward, assuming that they, get the chance. That being said, I think there are some things that I just would have done differently. So if you're not familiar with the story of this Tomb Raider or Tomb Raider at all, so Lara Croft the daughter of a rich... She's basically the daughter of British Indiana Jones. You know? That's the best way to put it. His gay face is he runs a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and on the side, he's an adventurer, and he goes and looks for artifacts and all that. So he dies, or disappears rather, when she's really young, and she grows up, and through happenstance, she goes looking for him, finds him on this mysterious island where there's these bad guys, and they're all looking for, you know, some mystical relic of some kind. Sound a little like Indiana Jones? Yes, it does, but that's what the whole series sounds like, so, you know. So anyway, I think the first thing that I would have liked to have seen done different is, once again, and this is done in the games, and it's done in the first Tomb Raider movie, is once again Laura's driving force are her daddy issues. You know, the absentee father, and, you know, trying to come to terms with that. And that's valid, but we've seen it before, and we've seen it a lot. There's been so many damn movies lately with young girls and, you know, and their daddy issues. It seems like every action film, you know, there's some, you know, Wonder Woman, I think, is one of the few exceptions to that, where the young heroine is, you know, consumed by her daddy issues. And comparing it to the rebooted Tomb Raider game, in that one, she's on the mission to kind of complete her father's work, and as kind of a thing that she has to do. But along the way, she has all these friends with her, and when they get shipwrecked on the island, you know, her friends are all captured, and her best friend is kidnapped by the cult, and it's this mission to kind of save her friends, because she felt she put them in harm's way, and didn't. You know, and didn't. But she totally puts them in harm's way and needs to rescue them. So, I was kind of disappointed that we went back to the daddy issue thing, and didn't just leave that by the wayside. We didn't need it. Now, granted, the daddy issues gives this new Laura a much more cinematic story arc, you know, but I would have liked if they stuck that aspect a little closer to the game, in my opinion. I also think that the one place I do have kind of I am a little disappointed in the film, I will use disappointed in this term, is that they took a real long time getting to the island. And then the time on the island was not as interesting as I was kind of hoping. What I was kind of hoping for is, again, a lot like the game. You know, she gets to the island, she's captured by the bad guy, she's escaped, and she starts kind of a slow progression to badass. You know, she has to learn to fight with the grappling hook, and then the bow and arrow, and then she finds a gun, and she's slowly building up to being the hero. They still do her build up, and they still do her, you know, kind of learning to, you know, take control and be the hero and all that. But it feels very abbreviated. You know, she escapes, she immediately finds the bow and arrow, and off she goes to be a badass. You know, it didn't feel like there was enough motivation, and it didn't feel like there was enough time to build up. I would have liked it if they got to the island earlier and had given her more time there. So that's the one thing I am disappointed in. Everything else, honestly, again, I would have preferred the switch where she was more trying to rescue her friends and just resolving her daddy issues. But, again, I understand that the daddy issues is more cinematic, you know, story arc. But the movie itself doesn't really disappoint. The action, I would have liked a little bit more action. But the action scenes were still pretty good. You got to give Alicia a hell of a lot of credit. From what I understand, she did a great deal of her own stunts, and just like in the game, Laura gets the shit kicked out of her. You know, this kind of goes along with the Atomic Blonde theory of, you know, action films, where your hero doesn't just get over the injury they had, you know, 2 seconds later. It's like, no, it still hurts, and they still have to deal with it. And yeah, she gets pretty beaten up by the end. and the actor apparently did all her own, or not all of her own stunts, but did a great deal of her own stunts. So, big ups to her for pulling not just a pretty decent acting job, I don't like using the caveat, for a video game movie or for a, for a comic book movie. I kind of like to describe the British, way of thinking in terms of acting is that you should give a great performance, you should give it everything you've got no matter what the material. But I think, it is a video game movie, and I don't think a lot of people had high expectations for it. But I think it did the job and did it pretty well. I thought it was entertaining. And I think the core of that is laid right at Miss Alicia's feet. She had to carry that movie. There were other actors, and they all, they gave her something to play off of and something to work off of. But in the end, it is Lara Croft's movie. Tomb Raider is a Lara Croft, thing. And if your Lara Croft isn't good, either written or acted or directed, then you're pretty screwed. And I think she holds up and does a pretty amazing job. I also really like that in terms of, it's a thing you hear a lot of whining about, and not unjustifiably so, that video game movies tend to suck. This is kind of a universal truth, because translating it's kind of like adapting a book. Something that's strictly a narrative thing where you can get through a lot of characters' motivation, not just by listing it out, because you can read their inner thoughts. That's harder to translate to the film. And just like, a video game, is much longer than an average film, especially these days. Or, back in the days of Super Mario Brothers, much shorter. And while there's a lot of mythology with a lot of games, finding a coherent story is often very difficult. This movie does a really good job. I think, in my personal opinion, this is the best video game movie I've ever seen. Not only does it give you a satisfying movie, beginning, middle, and end, clear story arc, good acting, good directing, but you can see elements lifted, right from the game, and not in just kind of a cute homage. They're keys to the game. The puzzles that go into a Tomb Raider game. She has to solve a number of puzzles. Some of the setups and some of the things, there's the scene, you see it in the trailers, where she's running from the bad guys. I mean, that is pretty much lifted. It's abbreviated because it's taken from a bunch of different points. But that's lifted like almost, word for word, quote unquote, from the video game. And again, not done a kind of a cute homage, but doing it, understanding that these are the sections that people really remember, and they're the exciting moments, and we want to keep those. So I think this film, and I think the rebooted game helped with that, just the way it was laid out. But this film, I think, lends itself to a franchise and to a different medium like this, and therefore you got not just a good movie, what would have been a good kind of action film if you've never heard of the game, but for those who have played the game and do love the game, it's honest to the game, and I appreciate that, because that's the big thing with adaptation. And what gets a lot of people pissed off when it doesn't happen is being honest and being true to the source material, even when you have to adapt things and change things to fit a different medium. And I think this film, by far, any video game movie I have seen, live action video game movie, I think this one does that job and does it incredibly well. So I really liked it. Again, I don't think this is the Spider-Man of video game movies. I think this is the X-Men or the Blade of video game movies. the Spider-Man movie, or maybe let's use it. This isn't the Marvel Cinematic Universe of video game movies where they figured out the formula and can do it perfectly, just about each time. This is the X-Men, like the Bryan Singer original X-Men from 2001. In that, this is the best it has ever been. The characters are recognizable, and there's a lot of promise. Now, the question is, first of all, I hope it gets a sequel. I would like to see Alicia back as Lara Croft and see they set up her sequels. Of course they do, because it's the world we live in. So they set up her sequels very well, and I'm interested to see her back and to see what she does now. Again, that daddy issues are hopefully resolved. But the question is, does this become the X-Men franchise, which has been running in place since, the second one? Or can they now that they've got this good step, can they now take the next step and make these even better with, the Iron Man of video game movies, the Captain America video game movies, the Avengers of video game movies? Can it take that next step up? I think given a good director and a little bit better script, this one wasn't bad, but I think it could have been better. I think given a little bit better script that doesn't rest so much on cliches, I think it can. I think this has more potential than any video game movie I have ever seen to go that distance and finally bridge that gap and give us maybe a good video game series, a good video game. My friend Matt loves the Resident Evil series, but come on, nobody's gonna say those are good movies. But I think this one could do it. So final grade for Tomb Raider, I'm gonna go with a B, a solid B, which is funny because that's the same grade I gave the Hurricane Heist, and obviously I think this is better than the Hurricane Heist. I think this one was better made than Hurricane Heist, but I think the thing Hurricane Heist had, this one didn't. I think the Hurricane Heist had a sense of fun to it, and this one could have used just a little bit more of that sense of fun, just a little. I think again that's where having other characters or friends, you could have had a comic relief character in there to kind of lighten up the mood a little bit, But I think there's a great deal of potential here, and I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with it from here. So go see this one. Let's get it a sequel, see if they can take the popularity of this one and build it. Hell, like I say, the other one got a sequel. I mean, let's be fair. I think this one can do with a sequel. So, enjoyable time, not perfect, but far from the worst thing I've seen, and far from the worst comic book movie I've ever seen. So, I'd still like it better than any of the DC movies. Okay, so, I mean, but then again, I enjoyed Root Canals more than I enjoyed any of the DC movies. Only a weekend of spring break left, and then I'm back to work. So I got one more movie I want to try to see, and we're going to try to hit that a little later on. So thanks for watching, and until next time, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.